Hi everyone, in this short lesson we're going to practice using comments in our code. Comments are pretty simple and throughout your programming journey you'll see them everywhere. I've tried to create 3 exercises where in my opinion comments can be useful for making the code easier to understand. Pause the video and try to complete these exercises on your own. Then continue watching to see how I solve them. Let's get started. Exercise 1. You found an old digital clock and are writing a small program that stores its alarm time. Create variables for the alarm hour and minute and print them to the screen. The alarm should go off at 6:45 because that's when the train station near the clock owner's house opens every day. Add a comment explaining why this specific time was chosen. Here, I use a comment to explain why I chose the value 6 and 45, and then I write the code you're already familiar with. We could create 2 constants with the values 6 and 45 and give them some horribly long names explaining what those numbers mean, but in this case it's much easier to just write a comment. Let's run the program and take a look. Exercise 2. You're writing a program that displays a short report about a space expedition. The program should store the mission number, the number of crew members, the number of samples collected, the communication status with Earth, the ladder of the sector where the spaceship is currently located. Print all the information to the screen. Use comments to divide the code into logical sections. For example, mission information, some code. Research data, some code. Communication status, some code. However, don't add a separate comment before every single variable. So, I use comments like these pretty often. If you have several lines of code that are logically related, you can separate them from the rest of the code with an empty line and also add a comment that describes the whole block. For example, in the first block, we create all the variables related to the mission information. In the second block, we create the variable related to the research data. If we add more variables like this in the future, another programmer will be able to quickly find the right place to put them. The same goes for the third block, which is related to the communication status. I could also add a comment to the block where we print all the information, but you can already clearly see that all we are doing there is printing the data. If we needed to print one group of data separately and then another one, comments might be useful there too, but we don't really need them here. Let's run the program. Exercise 3. You're repairing a small robot. Right now, the program stores the battery level, the motor temperature, the number of working wheels, and the camera status. Print the robot's current status to the screen. You already know that later you want to add information about the status of each individual wheel, but the program doesn't support that yet. Add a to-do comment in an appropriate place. For example, to-do, add the status of each wheel separately. Also add another regular comment explaining something that isn't obvious from the current data. For example, explain why the robot is still considered operational even with the only 3 working wheels. Okay, first we create our variables. The first thing you should always try to do is give them clear and meaningful names. The first variable stores the battery charge as a percentage, and instead of putting the long word percentage in the variable's name, I add a short explanatory comment to the right of it. If you write it this way, Visual Studio will show you this comment when you hover your mouse over the variable. The second variable stores the motor temperature. We don't really need a comment here because we can simply add a capital C to the end of the variable name to show which unit the temperature is measured in. I don't have anything special to say about the third and fourth variables. Next, as the exercise asks us to do, I explain how the code should work in the future and what's currently missing. You should know that to-do comments are very common in programming. Sometimes you're working on some code, but for one reason or another, you have to stop working on it. To avoid forgetting what you wanted to do the next day, programmers leave to-do comments as reminders for themselves. Otherwise, the idea might slip your mind over time, and you'll have to figure out again what you were working on and what you wanted to do next. Visual Studio even has a useful tool for these comments. If you go to View, Task List, you'll see a window containing all the comments marked with to do. This makes it much easier to find to do comments throughout your project. And finally, we print our variables to the screen. Let's run the program. That's it for this lesson. Thanks for watching. In the next lesson, we'll finally have a lot more exercises because our programs are going to become interactive. I'll see you there. Bye, everyone.